Across the globe, justice systems are being reimagined through trauma-informed care, desistance theory, and neuroscience. At the forefront of this movement stands a voice for change, a trainer of professionals, and a storyteller committed to evidence-based reform. This is The Criminologist, the podcast exploring the people, the practices, and the possibilities shaping a more humane justice system. And now, please welcome the host of The Criminologist, Joseph Arvidsson.
Hello and welcome to episode 236 of The Criminologist podcast. Happy to have you all with us today. It is not every day that I get to reconnect with someone who feels like both a kindred spirit and a fellow architect of change. Kam Stevens first joined me on The Criminologist nearly 5 years ago, and the conversation we shared back then planted seeds that have only grown stronger with time. This reunion episode isn't just a catch-up. It is a celebration of how far Kam has traveled and how much farther he's taking us all. Kam brings a rare fusion of lived experience, visionary thinking, and digital innovation. He has been deeply involved in global justice reform movements, including the Justice 2.0 initiative, which calls for a strength-based shift in criminal justice culture rooted in healing, dignity, and long-term transformation. Kam's voice in that conversation continues to amplify what matters most: human connection, community leadership, and the power of narrative. And now, with the launch of Sphear Music, Kam is expanding his reach even further, leveraging Web3 technology to empower artists, disrupt traditional music platforms, and elevate voices often left unheard. Whether through blockchain or storytelling, Kam is weaving a future where technology serves liberation, not control. This conversation moves across continents and concepts, but always returns to one thing: the courage to reimagine what justice, belonging, and impact can look like. So please, welcome my conversation with Kam Stevens, and I will see you all on the other side. Well, Kam, welcome back to the show. I can say that because I have had on returning guests before, but I did a little bit of research before this interview, and you and I first met back in January of 2021 when I was recording episode 40 of the Criminologist podcast. And for context, I'm now up to, I believe, episode 236, Kam. So you are one of the early believers, if you will. 5 years ago. How have you been, mate?
Amazing. When you frame it like that, it feels like it's been a lifetime. And although I haven't been on the show again, we have connected on many different levels. And it's been one hell of a journey.
You know, that's the beauty of, for me at least, one of the fringe benefits of this podcast. And you just articulated it, Kam. It's, you know, I find when I look at my life and my networks and my social capital, so much of that has just been influenced by the mechanism of this podcast. So what I'm saying is, downloads aside and hits and views and listens, it's just really, this is why I do it, is to, like I said, increase my social capital, build my networks. And I'm proud to have you included in that alumni group. And like you said, and we'll unpack this during the course of this interview, but you and I have crossed paths many different times. We'll talk about webinars we've done under the umbrella of Justice 2.0. And we could even talk about the fact that when I was visiting England not too long ago. I swung by and we hung out in Winchester for the afternoon with your team. So yeah, let's do this, Kam, for the benefit of the listeners who weren't listening 5 years ago during episode 40. Give us a little bit of an intro. Tell us your backstory to the degree that's possible. And then, I really want to get caught up on some of the amazing work you've been doing in the interim.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Kam Stevens. I'm a senior digital consultant and program facilitator, working predominantly in the UK justice system, but also internationally. I have 25 years plus of lived experience. I've been working as a consultant in the sector for about 5 years now. And the work that I do predominantly focuses on cultural transformation within organizations that operate in the justice sector.
I love it. I absolutely love it, which again is why our paths have been so intertwined. We're kindred spirits in so many ways. Could you talk about Justice 2.0 and the work that you've done with Dr. Sarah Lewis and her great team? But what is sort of the bumper sticker definition when you're talking to somebody at the pub or on the bus stop? How would you describe Justice 2.0 to the layperson?
So Justice 2.0 actually launched earlier this year, February this year. I guess as a team, we got together looking at everything that we'd learned over the 5 years that I'd been working, or 7 years. I was working with my director, Dr. Sarah Lewis, when I was in custody. So we met in 2018, and I worked on a cultural transformation project with her. And I think that is when the light bulb moment came on in my mind, in terms of actually seeing real impact on the ground, and seeing meaningful relationships being built within a custodial settings, less violence, better relationships with staff and the men that was in the establishment. And I guess over the years, we've really seen the same problems in every institution that we've gone to work in. And we were like, there's only so many of us, right? We're quite a small team, multidisciplinary team. How can we maximize the impact of the work that we were doing? And I guess it was through that we said we need to expand this and bring more people into this, because there's so many people out here doing great work in terms of upgrading the justice system. But everyone seems to be fragmented. So what we wanted to do was to launch a campaign, a strategy where everyone that was doing great work, no matter what part of the system you're working on, could identify with. So hence why I guess Justice 2.0 was born. I think we all nowadays have a mobile phone. And I guess a really quick analogy is when you get your app update on your phone, they get rid of what's not working well, what's clunky, what's not needed. They might put some new features in it, and they continuously develop and upgrade your applications on your phone. So you have a really good user experience. It can deliver the core functionality of what that application is supposed to do. So we looked at the justice system as a whole, and there were really good areas of the system that are working really, really well, that have meaningful results. But there's also a lot that is outdated in terms of its approach, that is harmful, not just to the people who are in prison, but also to the people who work in prisons and to our wider society. So how can we collectively address some of those areas and come together so that we can upgrade justice together? I think that's what it's all about. It's all about getting the whole community, every touch point of that system, whether it's families, whether it's the people in the community that help people when they're resettling, all the different organizations that work within a prison, whether you're operational or non-operational, whether you work in education, healthcare, whether you work in sports. How can we all come together and work as a team and to really just build this ecosystem, to make sure that, one, justice is representative for everybody. it actually truly serves its function, and we're not creating more victims by keeping to these outdated processes that are just not fit for purpose anymore.
I love the metaphor of the cell phone technology, the operating systems being updated, because I think people can relate to it. It resonates. And as you were speaking, Kam, I was making some notes of, okay, what might Justice 1.0 have looked like? I've been in this system for, oh dear Lord, around 40 years. So yeah, I have a lot of fodder when I can reflect on Justice 1.0. And again, I love how you said, we took a look at what was working and what wasn't working. And in my head, I started to catalog what Justice 1.0 looked like, the stuff that doesn't work. And yeah, top of mind, it's stuff like, the language we use and labels and stigmatizing. And we talk a lot about even the nomenclature around, say, the term offender, for example. Yeah. And we could go down a rabbit hole of static security versus dynamic security. But yeah, what were some of the other 1.0 things that you thought, okay, this is just some widely accepted thing we do because, as I hear, my head explodes. Well, We've always done it this way, Joe. I mean, even broadly speaking, Kam, I'm thinking of almost like even the notion of deterrence would be, okay, that's Justice 1.0. Mm-hmm. Or again, these commonly held things. What were some of your top 1.0 things that you thought, okay, we need to jettison this from the system because clearly this is so antiquated?
I think one of my top lines would be purely focusing on punishment, because data shows that just focusing on punishment alone is 100% ineffective for moving people away from crime. I think that there was a lot of inequalities in the system in terms of economical factors, where people grow up, what opportunities they have, a lot of trauma that a lot of people go through, which makes them fall into the justice system. And I think once you're in the system, you're no longer a victim. You're only a perpetrator. So they only look at the crime and they don't look at the root causes of why you've got there and deal with that. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes, because in essence, what it's doing is it's creating more victims by not giving people the tools to deal with why they've ended up in the system in the first place, whether that's around mental health support, whether it's around dealing with past traumas, whether it's around relationships, whether it's around your economic status of where you've grown up and the communities that you're going back to. So that is a massive one for me. I think on top of that is outdated policies. Policies that were drawn up in the 1980s that even the staff who are meant to embed these into actual practice, the disconnect from the people who are working in head office to the people who are working on the ground, who have the operational experience of trying to embed these things that don't work and that are harmful. And I think also the them and us culture that has been embedded in every aspect of the justice system from before, I guess, like I even knew what a justice system was, right? I think that is really damaging as well. I've been in, I guess, training meetings where new staff have come to the prison and their first couple of days in the prison sat in that training, and it was like really apparent and quite shocking that is one of the first things that they embed into new staff's psyche, that you can't trust people in prison. They're going to use you. They're going to coerce you. You got to stick with us, because if you basically are corrupt, you're going to be dead to us. But you need to have our back. Yeah. So this really builds up a picture of the people that are living in these environments, and it takes away the human contact that is really needed, that relational aspect, so you can actually find out what is going on with an individual and how best you can support them throughout their needs to resettle back into the community successful. So I think also we just warehouse people, and we don't give them the skills, we don't give them the tools to be able to come back into society and be like, good members, taxpayers, good fathers, good brothers. And from my experience, people want that. People don't like being in prison. They don't like being away from their family. They want to be good people. I'm saying everybody's on a different journey, but there comes a time in people's lives when they're fed up. They don't want to live this life. And the thing is that I see so much, I guess, over here is that we set people up to fail. We give people these sentences. We release them with little or no support and tell them don't come back with minimal support in the community. And from my experience of going through the justice system, when you're in that survival mode, you usually go back to your old behaviors because that's how you know to survive. Change is it's really hard. It's scary. Change is really scary. And if we don't give people the support, if we don't walk with people, give them the tools, give them belief, give them hope that there is something better out there for them and they can achieve and they can go on and do amazing things with their life in spite of where they've come from. This is one of the biggest failures for me.
Yeah. Kam, you used that word relationship a few times now, and I just wanted to focus it on that because I think that really is at the root of not just Justice 2.0, but so much of the changes we're trying to make system-wide is that there's not an emphasis on that. And indeed, it's ironically just the opposite. The systems tell the practitioner, do not have a relationship. That is taboo. Not just frowned upon or forbidden, but that is taboo. The last thing you want to do is have a relationship with these individuals. It really sends a message of objectifying the person in custody or on supervision. And we know all the bad things that can happen as a result of that. But I think that really is the key. And again, when we talk about these global systemic changes, it's not just getting, as you just alluded to, getting the new correctional officer to change that mindset. It's the public, it's the media, it's the politicians. And thank you for paraphrasing the catchphrase that I end every episode with by reminding people there's no them, there's only us. This us versus they it's just so draining on all on the change efforts we're making.
Yeah. And
I try to use metaphors to make the point, but I think, can you imagine if that same culture, that same mindset existed, say, in our primary school systems with kids, where the teachers looked at students as, well, do not have a relationship. Those are those people. They're not like us, right? Or healthcare providers sitting around the lunch table at the hospital talking about patients the way that correctional officers or probation officers sadly talk about those they serve. I mean, the public would be appalled if other vocations sort of adopted that mindset, but that's the standard operating procedure in criminal justice. It's this us versus they.
Yeah. And unfortunately, from what I'm learning, it is bleeding into other systems as well, especially young people who have, challenges, who come from backgrounds or situations that a lot of the time their behavior gets seen as being disruptive. And again, like over here in the UK, there is a real emphasis on the school to prison pipeline, right? And that's something that I can really understand because I've been in that pipeline myself as a very young child. And the thing that I'm really noticing is that people, again, just like in the justice system, in education, are looking at the effects of the behavior, but they're not looking at what the symptom is. They're being a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Being very reactive and not proactive. They're not getting under what is going on with this individual so that they're acting this way. And again, I've heard some horror stories of what is going on within staff rooms in terms of certain individuals saying that they know this person is going there, and they're not going to focus any time and energy on this individual because they're disrupting my class, and like they're just written off essentially already before they've even left school. So it does actually bleed in, especially in education here in the UK, in terms of what I'm hearing, because the needs of these young people are not being met. And that's sad, because for me, school is a safe place for young people because we don't know what is going on at home a lot of the time. But again, I guess going back to what you're saying in terms of as a community, we really need to take accountability for our part to play in helping people, in giving people opportunities, in seeing, I guess, injustice, in not othering other people. The thing that really, really, really shocks me, Joe, is a lot of the senior leaders that I work alongside, they have family members that have been in the justice system. Yeah. Some of them were born in the justice system, right? Like very deep connections. And are you going to other your family because they have, made a mistake or, under circumstances done something that they know they shouldn't have done? No, you're not going to other them. You're going to say, do you know what? You made a mistake. Yeah. You're still my brother. You're still my son. You're still my nephew. I still love you. I still want to see you do great things with your life, and you got every opportunity to. So why, because somebody is not our direct relation, do we treat them like this? That is a question that I've been trying to wrap my head around. It's okay as long as it's not like happening to me. Yeah? Does that make sense?
I love, Kam, when you just posed the semi-hypothetical question, are you going to other them? Because it reminds me of language I use when I talk about that same sort of mentality. Mm-hmm. I frame it as, most listeners or the public, they're acutely aware of terms like sexism or racism or even ageism, but I introduce this concept of otherism to them. And I say that's what plagues the justice system, in addition to some of those other things. But it's this otherism. And I love how you tweaked it and said, are you going to other them? Because that's just what it is. It's like, oh, you're off my team. You're on the other team now. Because one thing you did on the worst day of your life, which I'm now going to define you as, I'm going to take that, that adverb and turn it into an adjective. You're going to go from, for example, oh, Kam stole a car to Kam's a car thief. Kam struggles with addiction to Kam's a drug addict, right? Yep. Kam has conflict in his relationship. Kam's an abuser, or, and again, that's how we define that person. And I think that's what leads to that otherism. It's just really crazy. I keep taking notes as you speak, these pearls of wisdom that you keep dropping, and I can't keep up with my own notes here. But as you were speaking earlier, Kam, and I think this is part of Justice 2.0, is that really giving ourselves a public relations shot in the arm, not just with the practitioners, but as we're saying, even the public and the policymakers. And one of those things that I think really helps is, and you used that term survival behaviors earlier, it's getting policymakers, practitioners, the public, everyone to almost recalibrate the lens that they look at justice impacted individuals through, and take these terms that have been ingrained into our heads over years and generations, arguably, of when we hear delinquency or antisocial or disruptive, you mentioned, in school systems, or dare I say criminal, and say, okay, reframe all those, or I should say view all those as survival behaviors. Not delinquent behavior. No, that was a survival behavior. Not antisocial behavior. No, that's an adaptation. That's a survival behavior. And I think that almost takes a lot of the energy out of what's behind that otherism, which can arguably almost like a self-defense mechanism. Like, I can't deal with that heinous offense. I'll just psychologically conveniently say, nope, that's criminal. That's bad. That's this. because I don't want to take the time and the due diligence to peel back the layer of what's really driving this individual on my caseload or in their prison cell, right? I'm just going to take the shallow, what's above the ice, the iceberg, what's above the water. Oh, your criminal behavior, that's how I'm going to define you. And that's going to define our relationship, which I would contend in justice. The relations are very transactional, as you know. It's You do this and I won't do that. You don't cross that yellow line in the prison and I won't invoke this sanction. Or you do abide by these rules and I'll give you some free time. But again, it's very transactional. It doesn't get at relationships and really the core, if we wanted to do a deep dive on root cause analysis, which is why we have this revolving door, because we're just doing these real cursory steps to address behaviors rather than diving deeper into what's driving those behaviors.
Yeah. This week I was working in a prison this week, and prison was in a really, really tricky place a couple of years ago. And for me, going back in there this week and seeing the staff, feeling the energy, the different energy, feeling how much safer it felt, seeing staff saying to me, things are turning around and it's getting really good.
What a great feeling.
Yeah, it was a really, really good feeling. And that's all about relationships. It was just that. Build meaningful relationships, give people a voice, let people understand, I guess, how their relationships impact on the working environment, how it impacts on their safety, in terms of the men, how when you talk to somebody in a certain way, people get defensive, like how can we bring down those barriers? How can we co-create? Because one thing that's really, really interesting, Joe, right? You're going to love this. So we went to a prison earlier in the year, and we sat down and had a focus group with the officers, all bands. So we had non-ops, operational, all the way up to a band 8, which is, I think, just under a governor. And we asked them, what are the problems that you're seeing on the ground here? And then we went and had a focus group with the people that were in prison. And they said exactly the same things.
Of course they did.
And when we spoke to the staff afterwards, they were just in disbelief. And we basically said, you both want the same thing. You're both highlighting the same issues. You're both putting forward the same solutions. If you work together on this, do you know what's going to happen? Culture change.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. Work together. So for me, I think in terms of the work that I've been doing over the last 5 years since I've been in the community, I guess I've had a cognitive shift in my thinking. Yeah. And I don't know where it's come from. I think because I spent so many years in the system, and now I actually see the mechanics of the system, because you can't see that from behind a closed door, right?
Right.
But working, I guess, with prison leaders, understanding the mechanics, the challenges that they have, the effect that policy has on them implementing change, seeing people do a lot of things that they know are wrong, that they don't agree with, but they have to. The disconnect between the people writing policies and those implementing them on the ground. I just see that there is a real need for people to really co-create. We're doing that on I guess, like a operational level, right, on the ground, in terms of the people who are working in prison, the different departments, the men or the women who are in prison, right? But I think there's a real need to do that higher up. And I think that's how you'll get ownership. That's how you'll get buy-in. That's how people will hold on to it and own it. And I think that's something that is missing. It's more or less do as I say.
Yeah.
Right? This is what it is. And sometimes it's not practical. So I think that is, like, for me, one of the I guess the themes that I'm seeing emerge, because it's everywhere that I'm going. And the prisons that are really thriving are taking a more relational, collaborative approach. And they're really proactive. That's what I see. When things are changing, they can pivot to the needs as those needs are coming up. And I'm like, I've seen some of the best practice that I've ever seen in a prison in Northern Ireland called Hyde Bank Park College.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, did you hear what it was called? It was called Hyde Bank Park College. Now, in terms of identity, what does that say to you?
I'm a student. I'm not an inmate.
This is a place of learning, right? And I went in there with the team at Grow, Transform, Belong, and I was just blown away, absolutely blown away. And I was like, this is a model that should be rolled out everywhere, because it is growth in action. Like, it's probably one of the most growth orientated prisons that I've ever been in. And I think the world could learn a lot from what is going on there and their approach. So yeah, I think there's a lot of pockets of greatness that is happening. But again, Joe, it's happening in isolation. Yeah. Right. And this is the biggest problem that we have. Everyone's still working in silos. Everyone is still so disconnected. And I keep going to all of these conferences around the world, and everybody keeps saying the same thing. We need a whole systems approach. But I'm like, let's stop talking about it. It's been 5 years I've been hearing the same thing. Let's actually put it into practice.
Yeah, exactly. Let's segue a little bit into what you're talking about, which is getting that bigger realization to happen and getting these change makers out of silos and really normalizing that. Let's talk a little bit about Sphear Music, which I believe is one of your attempts to do this very thing we're talking about. So give us the 30,000 feet view of Sphear Music first, and then I want to do a deep dive into this as well, because I am so intrigued.
Okay. So Sphear Music is a digital ecosystem for artists to be able to monetize their art in a fair and transparent way, giving them ownership, giving their fans agency, and taking them along that journey, because your fan base is basically what makes you, right? So how can you give them ownership? How can you buy them in? And how can you bring them along that journey with you? And how can you do something that is exclusive for them, and that rewards them for participating in your journey? So we have a few products that we're working on. So the first one is a streaming app. But unlike traditional streaming apps, with Sphear, your audiences earn rewards for supporting their favorite artists. It's based on blockchain technology, which is an area of expertise that I fell into in 2021, being part of a fast-moving tech startup that gave me a real understanding of the evolving landscape in terms of technology and decentralized systems. On top of that, we have a digital marketplace where artists can basically sell their content direct to fan. So cutting out their intermediaries, you make your music, you upload it on the platform, and basically you can just advertise that to your community, and then they can just basically buy direct money in your pocket. So, and then we have an events platform that we're building so that you can basically sell your events tickets in a decentralized way. And then we also have a platform that we're building around merchandise. So whether you're doing clothing, whether you're doing digital collectibles, that link back, I guess, to the life cycle of, your artistry. So you can create a digital collectible that will give people 50% off of your event. So if you're doing a concert, by owning this and investing in me, you get 50% off entry to my events for life. Because this is where things are going. People want to have ownership. People want to support the artists that they love. And it shouldn't be going to the intermediaries, right? We can talk about Spotify. Artists are in, I guess, uproar about the fractions of a pennies that they are earning from their music, and Spotify is pulling in crazy billions. So yeah, we're just looking at how we can use this technology to really empower communities, right? So that you as an artist, if you got 10,000 followers and, even if you got 100 of them buying your work, supporting your work, you can actually make a career out of it, right? So I think there is a saying that all you need is 1,000 true fans that will come to your events, that will buy your merchandise, and you've made it as an artist. So what we're doing is creating tools so that artists can create, connect, and build their 1,000 true fans so that they can make a living out of their art.
And so, Kam, is the motivation here, the reintegration angle? So is your platform then supporting those justice-involved creators in a more equitable way? Was that part of the, your motivation here?
So one thing that I know is that in the justice system is so much untapped talent. I met an artist in 2018, and up to now, I've never heard or seen someone that is just so good, untapped, could be a global superstar in terms of my eyes, just so creative, but hasn't got the platform, hasn't got the knowledge or the backing. And I think one thing that the system has moved into is it's all about how many followers have you got. It's not about your art anymore. You could be a really bad creative but have a good following. People are going to invest in you. Like the big labels are going to want to invest in your community more than how creative and how talented you are. So looking at the justice system, 100%. It is something that I've got my eye on, how we can, I guess, it's really hard to get programs like this into I guess, these places, but to give people the knowledge, to give people the access to these digital tools that are going to help them to, I guess, use their creativity to get themselves out of the situations that they're in. And I see a lot of people doing that over here in the UK that have really turned to their creativity and doing well, whether that's in acting, whether that's in making music. And people are really screaming out for that. The traditional aspects of education, the maths, the English, people don't really want to do that. People are really entrepreneurial, right? And I think that there's a real need to look at, okay, this person might have been in here for selling drugs. But to sell drugs, you need to be good at marketing. You need to be good at sourcing a product. Yeah. You need to have good customer relationships. Yeah. So how can we encourage this person to use those natural skills that they've got to do something that is going to do good for them, build a business, but it's not going to hurt other people and it's not going to hurt communities? Somebody like that has just not been exposed to the world and the skills that they've got. So how can we let people understand, you know what, all your skills are transferable, right? There is something that you got here. You've just been investing into the wrong products, yeah? Or around the wrong company. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, Kam. And this just might be my own bias, perception as a former practitioner, probation or parole officer. But I can think of instances, Kam, where that was not only not encouraged, but it was dissuaded. For example, and you just sort of painted a picture of maybe, sort of that stereotypical poster child of what we're talking about. But yeah, I can recall having people on my caseload convicted of selling drugs, drug conspiracy. And what you just What you just described there, it would almost be like what am I trying to say here? Sort of like, the water cooler punchline. Like, oh yeah, your client who's out for distribution, he probably could get into marketing or this or that. But the conventional wisdom said, no effing way. You don't want this guy to get, why would you honor this guy's past where he was Tony Montana, but you're going to have him do it for Intel versus a Colombian drug cartel. Yeah, that was like, no. That's your haha, cute, very funny. Yep. But no one realized what you just said. Like, well, these skills are transferable. What's Joel supposed to do instead? Yep. Get him a job at the car wash, or something where he has no skills or traits or attributes. Again, I think it was just this crazy otherism we had of like.
Do you know what, Joe? There's a film with Leonardo DiCaprio. It's called Catch Me If You Can.
Of course.
Right. One of my favorite films, just to give your audience some context. He's a fraudster, and he's really good at his job. And he basically he's on the FBI's most wanted list, and they're chasing him all over the world. And when they finally catch up with him, they offer him an ultimatum. You can go to jail or you can come and work for us, right? Because what he could do was so good that they were like, we need these kind of skills, right? And he went on and that's what he done, right? And for me, that is just like such a great analogy. You're doing the wrong things because this is how you've been brought up. This is all you've been exposed to. But if we were to give people an opportunity to see the world outside of their block, or outside of, their community, to expose them to business, to expose them to the boardroom, to show them logistics, and how this works in a company where you haven't got to hide money underneath your bed and worry that somebody's going to come through your door, right? I think that there is such an appetite for that because a lot of the people that I meet when they're in custody, they don't want to go back. In that aspect, prison works. Mm-hmm. Nobody, if you ask anyone, do you want to go back to prison? They're going to tell you two things. No, that's going to be the first one. I don't want to go back. Or they're going to say yes, because there's nothing else out there for me. And that is what I find. Yeah. I haven't got a hope in here. I've got no support. So I might as well be in here. Yeah. And this is what we really need to change. We need to give people the skills, give them the opportunity so that they can come back into societies and be, I guess, good members, good fathers, Myself, Joe, like my community, right? I was in the justice system since I was about 13 years old, right? And when people see me today, they cannot believe like who I am. I get messages from people that I grew up with saying to me, I want my son to be like you. Yeah. Like what you're doing now is phenomenal. And the thing is, a lot of people had written me off. Yeah. Kam he's a drug addict, like he's a thief, he's a criminal. Don't go near him, like he's bad stuff. But until I dealt with all of that trauma, until I saw that there was an opportunity out there for me to be more than my labels, the labels that society had put on me, the labels that I put on myself, and the acceptance, right? That this is all that life is gonna have for me, so I might as well accept it, right? Until Dr. Sarah Lewis, I worked with her, and she said to me, no, Kam, I see you, and you can go on and do great things with your life if you work hard at it. And 5 years I've head down. I've been working really, really hard, and I see that. I see that there was a wealth of opportunities out there, and it's not giving someone who's been involved in the justice system a dead-end job with no prospects, with no hope, where they can hardly keep a roof over their head. No, it's about giving them real opportunities for them to grow as people, as individuals, progression, right? So my thing is, I see a lot of great movement in the space, especially around lived experience, right, Joe? Like earlier this year, we were lucky enough to be invited to the UN to present a framework about employing people with lived experience back into the sector. And I see a lot of appetite in terms of foundations and philanthropy They really want to elevate those who have been closest to the problem, right? And it's how do we do that ethically? How do we do that not as a tick boxing exercise? How do we make sure that people feel valued and the skills that they bring and their expertise aren't just a fleeting, come in, tell us your trauma, tell us your stories, to our funders, look, this is Joe, we're helping him turn his life around. Yeah. You support us. And then afterwards you give Joe a train ticket home and a £50 voucher and say, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We need to move away from that, because people with lived experience, once you've been in the system, life is against you. Your insurance is through the roof. It's hard to find a job. It's hard to get a house, right? It's hard to get insurance for your house. There's just so many barriers that keep people in recidivism, right? People want to move away from it, but there's so many barriers. And I just don't think we realize why, because I've been in prison for theft. Is my car insurance double the price when I had that offense is nothing to do with cars, right? or my housing. Why can't I get a house? Because, and why can't I get a bank account? Yeah. Why is it so hard for me to get a bank account or to get credit? Just because I've made a mistake that's got nothing to do with that actual system. These are the barriers that keep people in recidivism. And this is where we really need to educate policymakers, companies, that by excluding them, we're compounding the very thing that we're trying to solve.
In that great documentary, The Road from Crime, produced by Shad Maruna and Fergus McNeil and Stephen Farrell and Claire Lightower, during Adam Weaver's narration, somebody points out what you just said, and in a documentary filled with many quotable lines, that one really resonated with me when an individual said, the true sentence starts the day you leave prison. That's when the real sentence starts. I'm not going to let you off the hook, Kam. You mentioned your appearance at the UN as almost like a drive-by thought, but I can tell you when I was following your feed on LinkedIn and I saw that, my heart was melting. I was so proud of you, Kam. Talk about speaking at the United Nations.
Oh, wow. What an honor. So, yeah, it's funny how the universe works, because we got a small piece of funding to look at the experience of people with lived experience coming back into the sector to work and to make a difference. And we done a global survey. So we had people filling out our survey from as far as Singapore, Canada, US, Africa, Europe, UK. And when we got the data back, it was horrific. That's all I can say. Like, the experiences that people had was horrific. They talked about, what did they talk about? They talked about being put into roles that was only focused on storytelling or their past, not having support, microaggression within organizations, feeling sidelined and not included, no progression, people not getting paid. Yeah. So I guess from that, we co-created a framework for organizations who are employing people coming back into the justice sector to do it through an ethical lens. And I got invited by Penal Reform International, who I am part of their expert by experience advisory group, to come and talk about systemic racism in the criminal justice system. And we needed to present something. So I was like, this just feels like divine timing, right? So we sent over our framework in terms of what we've been working on in terms of people coming back into the sector. And you know me, I'm a creative Joe. So I emailed them and I said, hey, I know you said that I can come and talk and I've got 5 minutes, but I'm a filmmaker. I'd love to make a film, right? And they said to me, yeah, not a problem. You can do that, but you're going to have to use that in your 5 minutes section that you have to speak. And I was like, okay. So I made a 2.5 minute film about Justice 2.0. And I sent that over to the contacts at the UN, and they emailed me back and they were like, wow, we show this to the team and they basically want to open up the whole 2-day event with your film because they thought it was really powerful. And I was just like, okay, wow. So yeah, I got to the UN in Geneva, and it was surreal because I had so many people coming up to me telling me, "You're Kam Stevens. We love your work. Can't wait to see you in there." So yeah, that was just a phenomenal couple of days for me. Something that I never saw coming, and just really, really happy for the opportunity to go and represent Grow, Transform, Belong there, and all the work that we've been doing around lived experience. So yeah, it's been a bit of a surreal year for me, if I'm honest, Joe. It's been a bit of a surreal year.
I'm so happy for you, Kam. You mentioned our dear mutual friend, Dr. Sarah Lewis, earlier, and how she gave you a chance. And I think the words you used were, "I see you," right? Which, and I'm not going to get too metaphysical here, but, when we talk about the desistance process, I feel a lot of that is simply the recognition. The recognition in and of itself has an effect on the process. In other words, you being recognized as a thought leader at the United Nations, or Sarah recognizing you by saying, "I see you, come to work for me," or, and it's on my list of questions here, Kam, to remind you to share with us some of the other amazing awards and accolades you've got. But my thesis is that, Kam, and you tell me, did those outside actions, if you will, of being seen, being recognized, advance your change process, your desistance process, if you will, or even, your journey?
So, while you were talking there, something really just came back to me. And when I started working with Sarah, we done an exercise, and it was basically, she got me to write down, or the group of people to write down, how you think society see you. And then she got the group to write down how they saw me. And what I wrote down was a failure, a drug addict, a bad person, a criminal. I just wrote that. I don't think everything that I portrayed was in a really negative light. And in terms of what the feedback from the rest of the group was, Kam's a good person. You know where he stands. You stand with him. Yeah, he's a top guy. He's really caring. He's really thoughtful. He'll do anything to help people. And I think that exercise there, it really shifted my perception of myself. So when she said to me, "Kam, I see you," she kind of, I guess, broke down those layers, that hard exterior that people have in custodial settings, because it's a really dangerous place. It's really tough. And, people wear their masks to survive and get through the day. But she genuinely didn't see those labels. She just saw me, as a human being. And I think that was the first time that I'd really encountered something like that before. And it really made me stop and think about who I am and who I wanted to be and where I wanted to go in life. And I think the support that I've had from her, even post-release, has been really instrumental to my personal development and growth, because it hasn't been easy. I've had my challenges. I guess moving away from everything and everyone, that's a really lonely place, right? And to have her and to have my team, as I've been going through my transition and to build a network of like-minded individuals around me has been that's what it's been. It's the community that I'm in. People like yourself, Joe, all of the great people that I've met along this journey who are fighting for the same thing, who just want to make society better, who see people and want to support people in that change process. Like, for me, that was the missing piece.
Yeah.
For me, I didn't have an identity, or the identity that I did have was not pro-social. It was really harmful.
Let me ask you this, Kam, as you speak. Now I want to sort of take my hypothesis and spin it around. So you just mentioned how your trajectory was influenced by Sarah and the other people in that group at Grow, Transform, Belong, who were sharing with you their positive perceptions of you. And we can take you as the individual out of the equation. But I'm just thinking, more broadly speaking, for the vast majority of prison leavers who do not have that support system, let's just run that equation again, but think of what their neighbors are saying, what society is saying, what prospective employers are saying, that are still using those other labels of delinquency, criminal, drug dealer, thief. I guess, the point I'm trying to make is if you could attest, Kam, that your trajectory was influenced by the positive perceptions of Sarah and her team and others, try to imagine what that trajectory would have been like if you were only being observed and influenced by those traditional negative public perceptions of somebody leaving a prison system, which is what the vast majority of people experience, is the point I'm making here. Yeah.
And, Joe, I guess when you say it like that, since 16, I've been in and out of prison, right? I haven't got it right. And, one thing that really stopped me is a lot of times I'll be in there and that staff will say to me, why are you here?
Right.
It doesn't make sense. I don't get it. Like, you're smart, you're intelligent, you seem like you got it together. Why are you here? Mm-hmm. And the amount of times that I got faced with that and the pain, it really hurt, because I'm not a bad person. I do bad things. I do stupid things. I'd try and escape reality, or the reality that I was in. And I guess I had really bad coping mechanisms. But I see that a lot within our system. Like, there's some really, really good people that have just done bad things. They made mistakes. They've not known how to cope, or they've grown up in a place where that kind of behavior was the norm. And for me, I think, like, saying to someone the other day, these young children that are growing up in these war-torn places that are seeing all of these atrocities, you become your environment. Mm-hmm. In the UK, they have a big thing right now in terms of immigration and some of the things that are happening. But my thing is, if somebody's grown up a certain way, just because you take them out of their environment, put them somewhere else, doesn't mean that their behavior is going to change, because you've got to unlearn all of that, right? And that takes time. So when I look at the public in the analogy that you're using, when I look at my journey now, I'm like, where I am today, I don't think I would ever be here if I didn't have that support. Yeah, from my university, from Sarah, from my family. Like, my family saw me making a change, and they wholeheartedly got behind me. Seeing the good work that I was doing when I was away, seeing me wanting to go to university and study, moving away from everything that I knew to really focus on who I wanted to be. But without that support within the community, no matter how good my intentions were, I would have probably fell back through the caps. I'd have probably given up. I'd have probably lost hope, and I'd probably gone back into survival mode. So I think there's a lesson here for practitioners, for policymakers who are working in the sector. If we really want people to move away from a life of recidivism, we have to give them the tools and the support to do so. We got to empower them. We can't just be risk focused. We've also got to focus on human flourishing. What does that person need? Where do they want to go in life? How can we support them to get there? How can we talk about realistic barriers? but also look at solutions that can navigate those barriers, right? And I think if we start really shifting the mindset from punishment to growth, like you said, the biggest punishment starts the day you walk through the door, because that's when your sentence is supposed to end. But for many, it doesn't. And I remember putting up a post on LinkedIn, you probably saw it, and it said something along the lines of, a prison sentence shouldn't be a life sentence. Yeah, and I just see that so many people who, you know, they do their time, they come home, they wanna, you know, live a good life, but the system doesn't allow them to do it. There's so many challenges, and you know, getting a 3-year sentence, a 4-year sentence, a 10-year sentence doesn't mean that you need to be living through that for the rest of your life.
As I was reflecting on what we've been talking about here these last few minutes, Kam, I'm thinking I guess it's equally sad and promising that what we've been talking about, simply changing the perception or the way that individuals, whether they're in the system or members of society, view justice impacted individuals, that's free, right? When people talk about, oh, we're all on board, Joe, but we can't afford it, or we're operating under tightened budgets, doesn't cost anything just to view somebody differently. I mean, everything you just described about how your journey would have been different without the impact of Sarah and her team, and if you'd have just been, or I should say solely subjected to, you know, the views and perceptions of the public and the policymakers, those can be changed with some informational sessions. I mean, it's not a huge investment. Or maybe it is. I guess we're maybe full circle back to Justice 2.0, and what you're trying to do with Sphear is just change the way that we view individuals who have been sort of on a detour, if you will, some longer than others, into the criminal justice system, but it's not a life course pathway. And we hold the power as practitioners and the public and community and society, that we can just view those individuals differently. Even there, I fell into that trap of saying those individuals. I was falling into the otherism trap. But yeah, again, that's the double-edged sword. We can do it. Kind of a heavy lift, but kind of not.
I think that from what I'm seeing, Joe, there is a lot of appetite, especially, I guess, on the ground. I think one of the biggest disconnects we're having right now is at policy level, because a lot of people who are, I guess, in these positions, they've never set foot in a prison. They have no understanding of what goes on operationally on the ground and how their policies impact, I guess, those working in those environments and those living in those environments. And I think the people, they say the people closest to the problem are the people with the solutions, right? And for me, that is the people who are operating on the ground, the people who are going through the system. And we really need to include those people in this conversation in designing what a justice system fit for the 21st century looks like.
Kam, I've said it once, I'll say it 100 times, but the point you make, again, hit me over the head with a 2x4. And again, if the public only knew that was the approach that we take in the justice system, which is let's listen to the academics, listen to the practitioners, listen to the policymakers, arguably all well-intentioned, but I've given this analogy so many times. I live here in Minnesota, which is the land of the Mayo Clinic, one of the most, revered medical institutions on the planet. But I say to the listeners, could you imagine if the doctors and the surgeons and the administrative staff were all sitting around the Mayo Clinic at the end of the year trying to notch out their 5-year plan of growth, but they actually said, okay, the last people we want to include in this conversation are the patients we care for. The last thing we want is their input down here at the hospital. But that's what we do in the justice system. The last people we want to involve are individuals like Kam, who've actually lived through and survived this experience. Yeah, we don't want to hear from them. I mean, that's just insane. It's like trying to improve your educational system without getting the insight of the students. Or, a country in the Caribbean is trying to say we're really trying to boost tourism on this tropical island. The last thing you want to do is talk to the tourist. I mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. I mean, I've often said, those with lived experience, you are the true subject matter experts. I've never walked that pathway. I can't have that perception of the value it adds to this conversation.
What I see over here in the UK, there is an emergence happening. People with lived experience are finding their voices. And I'm not just talking about people that have been through the justice system. I'm talking about people that have fought policy, who have upskilled themselves, who have set up their own charities and NGOs to do the work that they see is missing in the space, who have that authenticity and that knowledge base, who are like, I'm not going to be a tick box exercise anymore, because I want to give back in a meaningful way. And that's not just happening here in the UK, it's happening all over the world. So I just feel really privileged to be, associated to this new emergence of practitioners, of people that are creating interventions and organizations to come back and try and help to upgrade this system. It's a really, really beautiful thing to see emerging in our society. And I think slowly people are waking up to the fact that people who have been through the system and have come out and worked really hard to turn their life around and educated themselves and have got that knowledge now, on both sides of the fence are really valuable.
Yeah.
But there are a few organizations that I've spoken to who are quite big, and they've told me people aren't ready for it. And I'm just like, you're missing the trick. You're missing the trick. It's happening. And sometimes when you miss the boat, you miss the boat, and you're going to have to wait 6 months for it to sail back from the Caribbean, right? So I think that there are those organizations who are doing some phenomenal work in the space, making sure that they're centering the voices of people with lived experience, and not doing it tokenistically, valuing people's expertise, people's experience, and the value that they can bring to organizations. Just going to big up Paula Harriet, another lived experience leader here in the UK, who is doing some phenomenal work, especially around the long shadow of justice, I think she calls it, like you were talking about, how the sentence actually starts once you leave prison. And she is a lived experience leader who is a CEO of a charity here in the UK called Unlock for people with criminal convictions. And what she does is she gives people practical advice on overcoming some of those barriers to getting back into employment. And they're doing some phenomenal work around lived experience, just like we are. So maybe that's someone you need to get on your podcast next, Joe. I think I can hit you up on that.
I was thinking, you're describing my next podcast guest.
Yes.
I want to follow up, as I expected we would. We went down some very valuable rabbit holes here. But I want to circle back to Sphear Music and your motivation and your drive and your vision there, because I know part of that is also sort of disrupting the current state of creative industries. And I know a little bit about blockchain from what I know about crypto, but talk about Web3 disruption and, again, your sort of larger picture of how this mosaic all sort of fits together.
Okay, so like I said, in 2021, I was part of a really fast-moving technology startup that was based on Web3, and I saw something that I'd never seen happen before in my life happen in front of my face, and that was we ended up raising £3 million on an idea. No product, and grew to a team of over 50 people around the world within 6 months, and had revenue streams of about 400K a month. And for someone who's never been involved in business, who'd never have a seat at a table like that, I was desperate to just absorb as much as I could. So I was there probably for about a year, and then I came back and started working back in the justice system. But what I really took away from that was that this technology is emerging. It's not going anywhere. There are governments that are adopting this all over the world. There is, I guess, a shift to digital. Like, even if you look at cash, I think it's an 80% drop in the UK. Nobody uses cash no more. Everybody's tapping their mobile phones, right? They're talking about digital currency, the digital pound, the digital US dollar, and it's coming. So this infrastructure is here, and those who are pioneering in the space are, I guess, the people who are going to be the most beneficiaries of this technology. So my thing is that I really want to expose people to what is going on, who might not be from, I guess, that tech background, because it's happening under our noses and people don't even realize it. It's in a lot of our infrastructure already. So I just really looked at what really worked in that organization and what were the challenges. And I think for me, some of it was the technical aspect of the technology. And I liken it to this. Everybody uses Google. Yeah. You want to search for something, you use Google. But nobody knows what's going on in the background of technology. They don't really care. It just has a great interface. And I ask it a question, it's going to give me the information, right? So that's another good example in terms of decentralizing information. Before, it was really hard, before the internet, to get information, right? In terms of Web3, what it's doing, it is basically decentralizing organizations. It's decentralizing power structures, right? It's about collective voice. That's why I really love it. It's about systems where you can build governance, where you can create immutable ledgers so that everything is really transparent, where power can be shared and where everybody can have ownership. And I think that for me, technology is all about moving humanity forward positively, right? It's a tool to help aid us. And for me, I see like a lot of great things going on in the space where it's being used to try and solve some of our real world issues. But there's also the other side where I'm seeing it used to use more punitive measures. And I'm very much in the thinking that this is supposed to be used for good. And I'm just trying to spread as much light in this world, and as much happiness and joy before it's my time to move on. And this is one of my vessels for doing it. I love music. I'm a creative myself. If I didn't work in the justice system full time, that is where my full-time attention would be. So you can call it my hobby, like my passion. We've all got to have something. And I guess the work that we do in justice can be hard. It can be tiring. It can be slow sometimes to see change. So this is just my passion of all things creative. So, I talked about university. I went and studied film and media arts production. So I'm a filmmaker, but before that I was a writer, a musician. So I still just, hold that really close to my heart. It's my happy place. So anything that I can do to aid, up and coming artists, to be in that space, that creative space where I find a lot of joy. I'm just pushing forward really hard with that.
I love your positive viewpoint of technology, I guess, in general, Kam, in a time where a lot of times more cynical individuals will be like, oh, the internet has, destroyed politics now because we're so hyper polarized, or it's created this culture of clipboard warriors that don't have face-to-face civil conversations. And it's this sort of dystopian view of technology. I love your reframe of like, no, good's going to come from this. Like, it is the great leveler, the great equalizer, or it's the great I mean, we've been talking about how the justice system needs a better public relations firm. Well, that's what the internet can be, right? I mean, there's we sadly see the shitty stuff that comes out of it. But yeah, I just applaud your infinite mindset around the good that can come from this technology. And like you said, it could be in the shape of, using media, filmmaking. Storytelling is a great way to change a narrative about a topic, right? Which I think, again, is something you're doing all of the above. There's a gentleman that I've had the pleasure of meeting in New York City a couple of times. His name is Jonathan Fisher. I should introduce the two of you together. He produced an award-winning documentary called In a Whole New Way. And basically the short version is he went into a New York City probation office and he got volunteers on supervision who wanted to sign up for a short crash course in 35 millimeter photography. And then he sent them out basically into the streets of New York City to capture their experiences on supervision. But, when we talk about using technology to better leverage a message, there's people in this world like me who would love to sit down on Sunday morning with a cup of coffee and read a white paper or read a great research article, but that's not going to resonate with everybody. And Jonathan tapped into this with his filmmaking, and he said, we just have a better way of telling the stories of these individuals. And like I said, it was an award-winning documentary. I can hook the two of you up or send you some links. But I'm just saying this within the context of, I appreciate where you're at here of this sort of problem-solving, embrace technology for good.
No, I love that. And most definitely, I think you need to send me over a link to that. I'd love to see his work and really happy to connect with him.
I want to ask you this because I'm sure there's listeners out there who are on board, clapping, cheering, saying, yes, we agree. What can they do to get involved with either Justice 2.0? I should point out that you and I and Sarah and another amazing individual, Adam Clausen, have done a couple of webinars on Justice 2.0. We did one for the American Probation and Parole Association. So if you're an APPA member, I hope I don't get too far ahead of my skis here, but if you have access to their backlog of webinars, track down the Justice 2.0 webinar if you're intrigued by this interview. And we also got the band back together for Megan Gap up in Ontario, I believe. And we gave this talk to about 160 Canadians up there. That was great. But we're gaining momentum on the message. As I was saying, though, if the listeners out there and they want to know more about Sphear Music or Justice 2.0, I'm going to load up this episode with a lot of links. But just again, if you could say like, hey, if you want to contribute as an artist, or if you want to have access as a listener, how do we get on the Sphear bandwagon?
So in terms of Sphear, you can follow us on Instagram at Sphear Music. If you want to know about Justice 2.0, you can check us out at www.growtransformbelong.com, and you will see all the work that we're doing around Justice 2.0 and upgrading the justice system. Or you can reach out to Joe Arvidson, and he can also point you in the right direction because he is one of our partners, right?
That's right.
But I guess in terms of what does this look like practically? One, if you're on social media and you see a really good piece of work that is going on that is progressive, you can just hashtag Justice 2.0 and it will come up in our feed. This is like the easiest way that you can, contribute, but also just show some humanity, show some understanding. When you see somebody talking that is not conducive to growth or, an outdated viewpoint, just challenge that in a really pro-social way. I think that would be the start. Be kind, show some humility, some humanity to people. I think we just need to have a bit more kindness in the world because we don't know what's going on for people behind the tears, behind the sadness, or behind the anger and the violence. And I think if we can just try and really just see people, it's a start in the right direction. We just got to be a bit more kinder, because nobody is born wanting to be in the justice system, wanting to be a bank robber, or a criminal, a drug addict. You know, there is always circumstances that happen to people along the way. You know, people are not born bad. People just do bad things. And that is human nature. We all make mistakes. So that's what I say, Joe.
I loved your synopsis of Justice 2.0, because it really did clarify, lest a listener was not sure that this isn't, you know, an official organization or a club or an agency where you have to apply. It's a movement, as Sarah would say. And if you listen to this episode and you're saying, I agree, then congratulations, you're part of the movement. As you said, Kam, start hashtagging 2.0, start looking for opportunities, I would contend, to share those success stories, or those, as I posed the question at the beginning of this interview, to list illustrations of not just Justice 1.0, but Justice 2.0. Like, make a note of that. Like, okay, yeah, this is an example of how we used to do things, but now we've evolved and grown, and we're more compassionate and understanding, and just bring awareness, I think, is such a huge thing that other like-minded individuals can do.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Most definitely.
Kam, I can't wait to get back over to England so we can hang out some more.
I know, man. I had such a good time when you came over here, and I couldn't believe how tall you were, man. Oh my days, I'm 6'2", but Joe, you're towering over me, man. Like, it was an amazing couple of days that we had over here.
It was an amazing couple of days. I call that the Zoom effect. When I have been blessed, I've been blessed to travel a lot, whether internationally or even domestically. But that's the consensus when I meet folks who, even people who I've had virtual relationships with years, when they see me in person. Oh, Joe, you're such a tall drink of water. But yeah, I had an absolute blast over there. I want to come back and do more work with you and Sarah and the team. And I know we're going to continue to collaborate in this space, Kam.
Definitely. We're going to make it happen. There's lots of exciting things going on. And we're going to definitely have to catch up on some of that.
Let's make a vow not to wait 5 years for another podcast interview, Kam.
Oh, I promise you. We're going to be doing another one next year. Yeah?
It's a date, mate. It's a date. All right, Kam Stevens, I'm going to leave, as promised, the relevant links to topics we've been talking about, so you can anticipate maybe an uptick in your inbox. Kam, my friend, it's always good seeing you. Until next time, cheers.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
As always, thank you for taking this journey with us here on the Criminologist podcast. I hope you found today's conversation with Kam Stevens as inspiring, thought-provoking, and energizing as I did. Kam's story is a testament to what's possible when lived experience, vision, and values come together in service of something greater. Whether it's advancing justice reform, leveraging technology for good, or reimagining how music and message can intersect, Kam continues to push boundaries, elevate voices, and challenge us to think differently. This was not just a reunion of old friends. It was a chance to witness evolution in real time. From our first chat way back on episode 40, nearly 5 years ago, to today's reflections on Justice 2.0, Sphear music, and the global pulse of change. If you're feeling sparked by anything you heard today, I invite you to connect with Kam, follow his work, and be part of the conversation reshaping justice, technology, and culture. And of course, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your networks, especially those passionate about social innovation, community transformation, and what's possible at the intersection of humanity and systems change. Until next time, I'm Joseph Arvidsson. This has been the Criminologist Podcast. And always remember, folks, there's no them, there's only us.
We went to a prison earlier in the year, and we sat down and had a focus group with the officers. We asked them, what are the problems that you're seeing on the ground here? And then we went and had a focus group with the people that were in prison. And they said exactly the same things.
Of course they did.
And when we spoke to the staff afterwards, they were just in disbelief. And we basically said, you both want the same thing. You're both highlighting the same issues. You're both putting forward the same solutions. If you work together on this, do you know what's going to happen? Culture change.
The Criminologist Podcast is a production of the Paragon Group, LLC. For speaking engagements, training opportunities, program design, or interview requests, visit theparagongroup.llc.com. To learn more about the TIDES supervision model, a trauma-informed, desistance-based approach to community supervision, please visit the TIDESLLC.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to check out the Criminologist YouTube channel for additional content, including exclusive video interviews and international insights. Both the Criminologist Podcast and the Criminologist channel are brought to you by the Criminologist Media Group. Don't forget to give the show a 5-star review. And as always, thank you for listening.